In Greek mythology, Pegasus is a winged horse that could fly and which eventually became a constellation. It's also seen as a symbol of soul and its immortality that can inspire poetry. However, in the world that we live in, it's an unstoppable military grade spyware that threatens to upend democratic processes around the world because it has lent itself to governmental abuse in at least 10 countries, including India, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Hungary, Kazakhstan, Mexico, Morocco, Rwanda, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. A total of 37 phones, 10 of which are said to be Indian, were infected with the Pegasus spyware, so powerful as to be able to strip mobile devices of any known security. In a sense, mobile devices infected with Pegasus are like an electronic tether, which only creates an illusion of free movement. Mayank Chhaya Reports is working on a story to offer a behind the scenes look at this extraordinary spyware created by an Israeli company called NSO Group. As part of that series, MCR begins with a conversation with the well known Mumbai-based journalist Jagdish Rattanani, who is also the founder editor of the independent media outfit The Billion Press. Jagdish offers a broad overview of what the spyware and its suspected use represents for India's democracy, individual civil liberties, and institutional autonomy. Jagdish Ratnani. I just finished watching a briefing by Rahul Gandhi again, where he has escalated it quite inevitably to the areas where one would expect. He has called it treason. He's saying that the Home Minister Amit Shah should resign and the Prime Minister should be subject to a Supreme Court inquiry. Is
Yes.
any of this going to happen?
So, Mayank, we cannot sit here today and say any of this is going to happen definitely. If you look at the way the government has responded to the scandal and the way it has unfolded, um, there have been a series of um, denials. The government is in denial. Um, there has been a statement put forward by in Parliament, but that statement falls short of saying that the government has not or has engaged with Pegasus or the NSO group. So we don't have a very clear denial on any possible relationship, engagement, exchange between the group that is in question and the government of India. Save that denial. There is everything else being said. Now, I could, if you look at the statement, I don't know if you have, but if I could pull that up very briefly, and if I have it right here, I don't know if I do, but if I do, I could tell you. So this is Ashwini Vaishnav, Minister of Electronics and IT, and he makes the statement on the 18th of July. He says it's a highly sensational story. He said in the past, such claims have been made regarding the use of Pegasus on WhatsApp. And he goes on to say that the basis of the report is that there is a consortium which has got access to a leaked database of 50,000 phone numbers. And then he says, even these people don't tell us whether this has actually happened. And you have to subject the phone to a forensic analysis to know that for sure. But all of this, does not fall short of a very clear statement that says, hey, listen, we in the government of India can tell you in Parliament that we have had no dealing with this group. That has not happened. And given the the atmosphere that we have in India and a question of credibility for this government, I am not surprised uh, that people will not believe what the government says, and this controversy is going to go on. Now, whether this will result in an actual Supreme Court or a judicial inquiry is a political tug of war, and it depends where this lands politically. Essentially, it's a political story, and we'll have to see how much the opposition can push and where the government caves in, if it does at all.
An NSO group which has created this spyware, which incidentally the Israeli government describes as a weapon. Uh,
Yes.
has not and is not going to say whether this government licensed it or that government did, but the
Correct.
consistent stand has been that what clients do is eventually their call, although they have the ability to stop its use if it is misused according to their charter.
Hmm.
Now, is there any way to prove that the Indian government did indeed license this, and there is a way to show that it did?
Um, I would put it this way: was there any way that such a quiet deal between the government of Israel and the government of India, presuming there was such a deal, and I don't want to jump the gun, though I personally believe there was, that apart, personal beliefs apart, would you have believed that this story would have broken the way it has? But it actually has. So we do not know what sources are going to leak at what time from which place. If you think the government of India is going to come clean at today's stage, I would have little hopes. But certainly we do not know how the story is breaking and building, and I would not rule out anything because there is enough in the air to ask some very serious questions, and the government has a lot of answering to do, which at this stage it does not appear to be doing in a clean and clear manner. So doubts will linger. And yes, I would come very close to agreeing with the charge by the Congress president that this is very close to treason. I'll tell you why. Because what has happened is a set of numbers, some frivolous, some serious, some close to authority, some close to the Supreme Court, some very close, or in cases of allegations with the former Chief Justice of India, have been targeted. Okay. Now, what does that tell us? That there is, and the Supreme Court was making some very important decisions at that point in time, and Supreme Court does make important decisions at all points in time. Why only at that point in time? And if that means that this data was available and it was used in a manner that would derail some of the processes, then what is it if not treason at the highest level? I mean, the government of India, if it has used this software, has opened, has virtually given up or surrendered the sovereignty of India to a foreign power. This is what would emerge. And at this stage, there are a lot of people in India who are willing to buy and buy into this argument for the simple reason that the credibility of the government is really at a new low, according to
Does this have the fatal consequence, political consequence for
me. Mhm.
the BJP and the Prime Minister personally? Do you think it could put him in on so much back foot that he would begin to rethink his entire strategy, and not just with this, but generally speaking, the way he has governed?
So sometimes when you ride a tiger, I would argue it is difficult to unmount it. I would also argue that this is the kind and style of governance that you will get from this lot. I would suspect that this is a team of people who would not know to govern any other way. So, my worry would be that you would get more of the same with the idea that you can brazen it through, that you can push it through, and it will be forgotten tomorrow. I am not very hopeful that, if you're suggesting that this is a government that will turn a new leaf, I don't think that is something that you and I might expect, you included. Uh, uh, but yes, they would do more of the same. They would want to hide it. They may want to forget it, and they do everything to say, maybe they would say, we would not do this hereafter, but let us at least bury this. And every attempt would be in that direction. I don't think there is going to be a new leaf happening. You saw only today and yesterday a large Hindi newspaper group, the Dainik Bhaskar, has been raided, and Dainik Bhaskar has been at the forefront of some very powerful reporting on COVID and how people have died across several states. So you can see it is a politics of confrontation, politics of force, politics of power, and we will use it to go where we want to go. That appears to be the grammar of governance at this stage, looking at it from the outside. And I am not hopeful of any new leaf being.
Connect,
turn.
Connected to this is the near total absence at the ordinary citizens level of any outrage at what has happened. In fact,
Hmm.
to the contrary, in quarters where there is strong support for the prime minister, it's being even suggested that some of these journalists and other types actually deserve to be spied on. So, with that being the case, why do you think people are not exercised enough to? Because this is a huge, potentially a huge scandal, perhaps the biggest scandal you can think in terms of the country's democracy.
Yes, I want to clarify that this is not a case of a few journalists being spied on.
No,
It is
true.
far more than
No,
that. It is
that's.
far more
I
than
think
that.
I'm just reflecting what the
Yeah,
social media mood seems to be. That
yeah,
these are all just elites
yeah,
fighting
yeah.
among themselves. It's not such a big deal.
Yes. So I would say it depends on who you listen to and which echo room you are sitting in. Again, from the outside, if I see myself as a bit of a distance, I do sense the mood turning. I do sense I have seen several inputs, credible ones, of people who were supporters of this regime and this party asking questions. Now, is that a powerful enough the group that will lead change, that will express outrage? Maybe not. Don't forget this this the ruling the powers that be today have controlled everything, have in control with them all possible levers, including going after you if they want to go after you, Mayank, personally. So people are unlikely to come out with a very loud voice. But across newsrooms in the country, I've been speaking to several newspaper rooms today and yesterday, across business leaders, across several students, across several people in academia, um, there is a quiet outrage that is building. I think I cannot deny that. But I am not the one to say, no, that is the meta story, that is the mega story. You may well be right. There may well be a large number of people still saying, no, Modi is the way forward. And that is the battle, really, that the Congress is trying to find by coming out with very clear statements, the opposition trying to unite, because till you do not give some fuel to that opposition and present it in a cogent, credible manner, it is very difficult for people to take a wire media out and to air it in that manner. When you have a very strong force opposing the government that is cohesive, that talks in a manner that is unified and presents a credible opposition, things will happen. That is at the political level. But beneath the surface, a lot of anger, in my view, is building. That is my view. I again want to be very clear that this is not every view. I want to see that it is bounded by what I am reading, because I am also connected with a lot of people, but they would probably be not the kind of people who are still celebrating Modi, and there could be quite a large number even there, and that can be handled only when the opposition comes up and comes with an agenda that is clean, clear, credible.
The act of deploying a piece of software or a piece of spyware or a piece of weapon like this is in itself egregious, it is outrageous, it is malicious, all of it. I'm more equally curious about whether, having deployed it, what were the visible consequences of the people who were targeted? What happened to these people who were targeted? In fact, The Guardian today, yesterday, in fact, reported even the inner circle of the Dalai Lama.
Yes,
Some of the names I know personally because I've dealt with them. The Tempa Sharing, for instance, who is the
yes, yes,
permanent representative to Delhi and who happens to be the brother-in-law of the Dalai Lama,
yes,
and a couple of others, they were also targeted. So the sweep is pretty broad.
yes,
Uh,
yes,
it's not my case who did it. I don't know who did it. I mean, it's logic would suggest that it had to have been someone at the top government level, because the software is sold only to governments, according to NSO.
yes,
So
yes.
forget that aspect. My point is the apparent abuse, misuse, use of this uh, spyware. It is so extensive. What do we do now?
See, let me put it this way. Um, it is not unheard of in India that your phones may be tapped. It is not unheard of. It has happened in the past. I personally have seen people in local police actually show me there was a time when they could straight away go to the service providers and tap a few phones of some criminals that they wanted to. And I've seen this at work. So it is then came some systems, some processes, then came some forms that you got to go through, and due process of some kind. So that kind of a tapping or listening in or looking in is of a variety that is malicious, but at a level that is far less insidious than doing it in the manner that it has been done now, which is get in a foreign agency, pay that foreign agency, and target a few numbers, and nothing needs to be installed, and the spyware takes over. Now this is insidiousness and the selling of the nation of a very different order, and it cannot but come from the very top. Yeah, I agree with you on that. What was the impact on the people who were targeted? Uh, that we will never know. But if you were to just go and look at what was happening at that time in the country, what were the burning issues in terms of judgments, in terms of the pressures on key people, you can easily make a informed guess that the story or the outcome has been tilted or turned in a manner that was probably desirable again to the powers that be. And again, if they did not get everything that they wanted, this is bad enough because they could be playing for an even longer haul, but that would be only to benefit a few political alignments at the cost of the nation. This is the selling of the nation that we cannot. I mean, I one cannot. I think you said it very well. It is malicious in the extreme, and one cannot escape the fact, and it actually brings before our eyes that this establishment of today will do anything and anything. There are no limits to achieving whatever they think are the ends that they want to achieve, and that tells us that the times that we are living in and the risks that this independence of this nation faces today from people in authority.
No, but unless there is very significant political cost, not just to the party in power, but those at the helm of it,
Hmm.
why would they have any incentive not to brazen this out?
Yeah, so that will take our discussion to the political arena away from the case. And all I can submit to you is that the Congress party did not fall in a day. It had to do sins after sins after sins to reach the stage and be completely demolished and wiped out the way it is today. So it would be no one's argument. It cannot be an argument, I suspect, that there is no political cost to it. It is just that there is no instant gratification in this political cost. This political cost is kicking in. It is kicking in its own way. India is, like it or not, at its grassroots a vibrant democracy. People don't like this, and how it plays out, uh, one can speculate. I would rather not. There are multiple ways in which it will open up. The Supreme Court could take it. The opposition could get united. There are many ways in which it could play. But to say that it will not play and they will, and therefore they can brazen it out, um, I would not be too sure. Though I'd not be surprised in the short term if that happens. I'll give you another story. Some years back, the U.S. journalist Seymour Hersh, okay, he made an allegation in a book that Morarji Desai was a CIA agent. You would
Right,
be aware of that. And he also mentioned, and Seymour Hersh was a was a hugely respected U.S. investigative journalist.
right.
Okay, I think one of the senior Indian journalists has worked with him. I think it was Inderjit Badwar, if I remember. This is an old story, so pardon me if I'm getting the names wrong, and I apologize for that to the people the names I'm taking also if I am wrong. But Seymour Hersh for sure made that allegation.
Yeah, sure,
It was a
absolutely.
very specific allegation. Amounts were stated. This is the CIA paid him to do something, to give out
Right.
information.
Then I'm
Now,
very
what
aware of it. Yes.
Yes, and what was the impact in India? Nobody believed Seymour Hersh. That was the credibility of Morarji. You may have disagreed with Morarji Desai. You could be a Indira Gandhi to Morarji Desai. Nobody would believe that a Morarji Desai, who you have interviewed Mayank many times, who you have taken pictures of him, drinking the urine therapy, or
No,
undergoing the urine
no,
therapy. If I remember.
no, he
Oh, he
scoffed at
declined.
it.
He
Yeah, yeah,
declined. Okay.
he was rather
At least
pissed.
you.
If you forgive my the
uh,
expressions.
yeah. You attempted at least to, you knew him very well. But nobody, I'm sure you did not, I did not. It doesn't matter who Sam or Harsh has embodies. That is credibility. Whether you did wrong or not, people have faith. There is no trust in this government. No, whether they did it or not, whether they deny it or not, you're going to believe the worst of them, because this is the way the government has presented itself. It has divided India. It has created strife. It has fought at every corner. It shakes no one's hands. It thinks it is right and wants to go on its path. This is the arrogance of the brute majority in parliament. And how long might it run is a question
Right,
to ask.
right. Coming back to the spyware, I have been in touch with NSO
Yes.
via email, and I'm not clear yet whether once it is licensed to a client, the client handles the data or the data goes to them. I don't think the data goes directly to NSO. That couldn't be the case because it's like you mentioned, it's like mortgaging your sovereignty. I don't think that's happening, although a lot of people would like to believe that. But they point out that they have the ability to shut it off if they find that there have been violations in terms of the use of the software or the
Hmm,
spyware.
hmm, hmm.
Is there
See,
any way? Is there any way to zero in, presuming that Indian government did buy it? Who would be monitoring it at our level?
See, Mayank, I will put it this way. It is irrelevant to me, in my view, whether this data is accessed by the Israeli group live or later or not at all. It is irrelevant. When you have software of this sophistication, please understand that it is possible for that group to listen in even to the Prime Minister's conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely.
There is no doubt about that. This is how they have built the software. Is very it's a very risky. It is an explosive kind of device. It's a kind of a destructive device, or a system. Um, and and so if someone argues before you, or the NSO says, or the government of India says, even if the data was only with government of India, I would refuse to believe that the selling agency would not have access to it, and I would say access to it live, because they know the system. They have built the system. Who's going to stop a super hacker program from being hacked into or listened into by the makers of that super hack? I mean, that is an amazing proposition to say that they. So then, clearly, naturally, immediately, obviously, at all times, continuously, in a manner that was not stopped in any way, unknown or known to the government of India, had access to the data, is what we will have to necessarily presume. Any other conclusion would be unwise in my view. Okay, the maker of such a hack is going to certainly listen to the hack, because these agencies are typically also very close to intelligence agencies. They operate hand in glove with them. So don't tell me that the Israelis are not going to be interested in what the Chinese are doing, what the Indians are doing, and they will certainly listen. They have not overnight. Even if they want to be your friends, they want the data, they want that leverage, and they will take it. And you have given it to them. So this argument that they did not have access but I have access is a very is not at all a mature argument that anyone would want to buy. That is one point I want to make. Okay. The second point I would like to make on this is, and this has been tweeted by former ministers, by many other people have mentioned this. Um, you tell me the danger, the significance, or the risk of this, the danger of using such software um, in a country which elects its governments by by open voting, as we do, using electronic voting machines. Now imagine, the EVMs are not sophisticated modern phones, or smart devices that keep on locking up security holes if they are found. All right. uh, and a lot has been said on EVMs. Now, if your the question to ask is if your phones can be broken into this way, what stops me from saying that the EVMs cannot be? And therefore, there is a new demand that will rise in India if it already has not, that we must stop the EVMs and go back to voting on paper ballots, because now there is going to be very little faith in that device. Because
Let me interrupt there. EVMs are they online?
EVMs are not online,
So I mean,
and
then there is a problem. How do you? It has to be online for it to be hacked in
yeah,
a way that you're describing. If
so
it's
there
a
is this.
standalone machine which has nothing to
Yes,
do, which has no internet connection, you
yes.
can't hack it.
So there is a lot of research available on EVMs and how they can be hacked, even though they are not online. And there is enough material available in terms of detailed arguments and research reports that will tell you the risks of EVMs. All I am saying is the risks of EVMs have not increased or decreased today. All I'm saying is that what will come into focus now is a renewed demand that we not rely on EVMs, because this is the kind of hacking that is possible. It is going to be very difficult for a lot of people to believe that EVMs cannot be broken into. EVMs, after all, are software chips. After all, these are machines which are going to work on some kind of software preloaded on it, and the argument that it will not talk to the outside world, and therefore you cannot put any code on it. But even that has been debunked in some research articles. So I think that is another side, given the credibility of parties with each other today. This is going to be a new demand that will come up very soon, and which will have its own implications
How do you
for
see
our.
the? Sorry,
Go
you
ahead,
were
go ahead.
completing a thought, or you
No,
did.
that's fine. Yeah, no, I
Now,
did. Go ahead.
how do you see this piece of spyware
Yes.
being used by governments which are not this, for instance? It's an attractive piece of software for
Yes.
anyone in power. It
Yes.
is extraordinarily intrusive. It strips you bare of all your personal security. You're essentially naked in front of it. Uh,
Yes.
do you think this genie could be put back into the bottle it came from? I mean, of course, the company can turn it off for sure, but then there would be
Yeah.
others.
Yes, but now what is going to happen is a lot of people in sensitive positions are not going to be relying on their phones for a lot of things, in my view. Like the Chief Minister of West Bengal, Mamata Banerjee, actually held aloft her phone and said
Yeah,
how she had taped it. Uh,
plastered it, yes.
See, yeah, so this is not going to, faith in the system is not going to come back. Even if the government of India is not doing it, there is this strong worry that some other agency is doing it. It could be a business group that is doing it. There are business rivalries, so you can so key political players in the country, I don't think will be relying so much on these phones, and this faith that you're protected is not going to come back very easily. What India does need is a transparent system where the government is held to account. There is a process on which you tap what you want. I'm not saying tapping may not be required for some key accounts. That is not my argument. You may certainly want to listen in for this, for security reasons, for safety, to protect people, yes, to fight against terror, yes, but there will have to be, like in the US, a cleanup happening, a proper legal framework passed by Parliament, which has a committee of government and opposition, and every single request is vetted, causes shown as to why you need to listen in, and then permissions given, and a very handful, very select few accounts then can be released under. But the system will have to be built transparently, openly. That said, even then it will be taking a long time for faith to return. I don't think people are going to be very comfortable.
Do you think it's time to recall courier pigeons?
Actually, one senior academic, tweeted that or put it on Facebook. I thought it's time to
I
go back
see.
to pigeons. And sometimes there is this advantage of old the old ways of doing things. Um, I don't know how we can go back to that era though. We are Everything is on the phone. No, you would agree. From your
But
bank to your every single thing is on
I
the
mean,
phone.
are we going to? not try something remarkably simple? Are we not going to be honest in both our private and public conduct, so we couldn't care less who hacks our phones?
Sure, I see. It is nobody's case that that this large number of people targeted are dishonest or journalists are The question is, why should anybody listen in? If I am running a political strategy, why should the opposition know who I am meeting and what I am talking, and what my agenda, what my next campaign is going to be? That does
Right,
not mean that I am being dishonest, but you have no right to listen into what I am. You could listen into bedroom conversations. You have no
right.
right to do that, and that's not fair. And we don't want to be a nation where we have no limits. We give say goodbye to all to shame. We say everything is open, and anybody can look into anything. Then tomorrow, like those cameras have got, mini cameras, you can also buy. Eventually this is going to become cheaper and cheaper, and then everybody listens into everything, and you just make this a kind of a arms race. Where do you want to go with all this? Why should the government of Israel may want to? Why should India? Why should we allow them to be? You see, when the US invaded Iraq, I remember the US did a lot of efforts to see why can't Indian troops come and fight in Iraq. Now, what did we say? We said, why should we be going there? Or in Afghanistan. You know, we, it was a very obvious choice. Why should we get into a war where we don't belong? Why should we allow software to look into our own citizens controlled by a foreign power? Why do we need to do that? Where are we going? Except a government that is in many ways malicious and is selling India, breaking it to bits, and really taking away all the values that we stand for. If you go to India, this is not the democratic India that so many of us want to live in. This is this. I mean, we have to ask those questions. I'm not saying everything is lost, mind you. I don't want to say, throw my hands up. No, this government will have to answer. But why are we at this stage? And that question must be asked.
First
I
it
think,
was the terrible mishandling of the pandemic.
yes.
Now it is this. Do we wait for another crisis before these two are pushed away? Is that how it's going to be?
I think this is only going to escalate because in desperation, things will happen. And we still have to see how the story further develops and where it lands. This is explosive. It is not going to go away in a hurry. The charge of treason is a very serious and a very, it is not an irresponsible charge uh, that has been put by the Congress party. And we let us wait and see how this develops. I want to tell you one more thing before I forget. Um, as the scandal has opened up, you may be aware or you may not be. So I'd like to tell your viewers who are out there, and they should know this, that the 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 National Security Council Secretariat, which is really the body or the system that advises the Prime Minister on issues of national security, okay, on all areas of national security, with the National Security Advisor being Ajit Doval, okay.
Right.
Uh, Now, the budget allocation for this National Security Council Secretariat, or what we say is the NSCS, okay, it has been pointed out again today. It has come in the past, increased tenfold
I
in
saw that, yeah.
2017-18. It used to be around 30 odd crores. It became 300 odd crores.
So the
Okay, and
implication
then
being that suddenly the money was needed to do something,
this,
buy
yeah,
something
this,
very expensive.
yeah. So the suggestion being there is no reason why a secretariat see, they don't go and do the security. They're looking at systems and advising the prime minister. So this tenfold increase is now being looked into, or is raising some eyebrows once again. Even then it did, but that time it was linked to producing chips so that India can have independent IC circuits that are critical to
Right.
some defense systems. Now you can have some other questions. So I'm not saying that this was used for that. All I'm saying is in an atmosphere like this, you cannot. So this is not Seymour Harsh Morarji Desai. This is credibility gone down the drain. Anything you say will be called into question, and who's responsible for that? But the way our governance is going at the very top, and that is
Well,
the pity.